My name is Mevan. I work at Full Fact. Full Fact is the UK's independent fact-checking charity. We've been fact-checking since 2010, which means we've had a very busy period. But let me tell you a little bit about, actually, who knows about Full Fact? Just take up your hand. Oh, 30 of you. Okay, great. So the thing that we're trying to do in the world is give people the information they need to be able to make up their own minds right then and there. So in the short term, it's the fact-checking day-to-day, giving people that information they need from primary sources, so not asking them to take our word for it, but saying, here's the research that you might do if you had the time to stop everything and start looking. So everything is checkable. In the medium term, we also go out and get corrections, so when we see something has gone wrong, we will ask the publication for a correction. Sometimes it goes better than other times with certain publications. And then in the long term, what we're doing is collecting that evidence from our fact-checking, from our corrections, from our interventions, and submitting it to select committees, public inquiries, ways that we can systemically change the information ecosystem. So for example, we trained up a lot of government statisticians once so that they could actually think a bit harder about the information that they put out and how they put it out. Or another example is the BBC did an impartiality review at some point, and we had a couple hundred of pages of evidence of things going right and going wrong. We also did the same for the Leveson inquiry, where we submitted quite a lot of evidence of the corrections process going right and wrong. So that's Full Fact in a nutshell. The work that Ed and I do is around technology. We want to build a world where a small team can make a big impact. Fact checkers are often around the world made up of very small teams. They're part-time, they're volunteers, and they're expected to be at the front lines of all of the information in the country, which is just not going to happen. So we're trying to look for systemic ways that we can build things that scale the work of fact checkers, tools that can actually make them do more. We also want a world where fact checkers can spend time on the difficult questions. So it's not, we don't want to know that the population of the US is 320 million, but we do want to know if the NHS is in crisis. And if I can get more fact checkers working on those hard problems, then that's a better use of that human resource. Also, in the long run, we want a world where you never have to settle for less than the whole picture. And that means all of us never have to settle for less than the whole picture. Because there's a lot of cherry picking that happens. Politicians and campaigners will pick the facts that put forward their worldview and leave out this whole other area, and we're trying to fill in those gaps. So we started from the tools that we've been wishing for ourselves, and bear in mind that we are a tiny charity, so doing tech in the first place is mental. But we decided to do it anyway. So the two things that we thought that we might build in the initial phase of this was a tool that helped us monitor every single time something we fact-checked was repeated, because it's not enough to fact-check something one time, you want to know exactly who is repeating it, and I'll show you that tool in a second. And the second thing is a tool that helps us with live fact-checking. So we would often take our team into TV studios during elections or referendums, and within seconds or minutes we would be live fact-checking something that person had just said. The reason that we can do that is because people repeat themselves, and because we have very experienced fact-checkers. So I'll show you that tool as well, and it's called Live. So the first one, Trends, is a monitoring tool, and it allows us to see who's repeating things. So here's the live demo portion of the day. So this is what we've called Alpha, because we can't think of a better name. And it's not working, which is a great start. Might connect it to the internet. Okay, cool. So, phew. This claim, Britain sends over 350 million to the European Union each week. It's wrong, it's boring. If you want to read the fact check, you can read it on the website. But what this tool is doing is taking you, we're looking at every newspaper in the country, we're looking at Parliament, and we're looking at specific Facebook pages that are political, and we're finding repeat instances of this claim. So this is the EU referendum. Actually, all of the searches are being indexed right now, so this isn't exactly the right graph, but what you can do with this is zoom into a particular area, and underneath you can actually see the specific citings of where it was repeated. For example, this is Conservative Home, The Guardian, New Statesman, and it should take you directly to that. Great. So that's not that interesting for this conference, but I hope you can see how it helps us measure our own impact in a way, because we're seeing who is repeating things and whether any interventions that we actually take are having any effect in the long run. So that's more for seeing if what we're doing is making any difference. So the second tool I want to tell you about is called Live. It's a live fact-checking tool, and it identifies claims in real time and provides short verdicts or data for journalists and fact-checkers. So kind of like the FT tool. What Live does is takes TV subtitles. So at the moment we do just the BBC. And I'll show you what's happening on BBC Two right now. They're talking about football. But this is a small demo of Prime Minister's questions. These are the subtitles coming up in real time, and every single time there's a claim that comes up that we've checked before, it takes you directly to our fact check of it with a small summary. So that's great for us because it means that the thousands of fact checks that we've done are being reused. It also is great for our fact checkers because that means in real time they don't have to like hold the information in their head about what was the latest article that we wrote on this topic or which one's up to date. The system does it itself. And we're hoping that eventually it can be put into the hands of journalists as well, so they can have the context that they need to be able to do smarter things. There's the second thing that we've introduced. Well, I don't know where to start. So one other thing that we've done with these transcripts is allow people to start a live transcript that could be shared between people. So you could start a live transcript like so. And you get the option of adding speakers. It's pretty basic, but actually in a live fact-checking context, it makes a really big difference for us to know that these sentences are from these people. And then at the end of the day, we can highlight specific things and filter by them. For live fact-checking purposes, where you need to be neutral in the people that you actually end up picking and make sure you have enough from each side, being able to have small context like this is really valuable. So that's our live transcript. And bear in mind, this is all still very early days for us. And I've heard a lot of really great things in this room, but I'm going to go away and steal. And then the final thing is we wondered if we could go an extra step further. Instead of actually taking people to our fact checks, could we in real time take them to the primary sources? Because ideally, I want to take people to primary sources. It's not about getting hits on full fact. It's about giving people the facts that they need to the best available evidence. And sometimes the thing that they're trying to read is too complex to take them to a primary source, in which case fact-checking is fine. But sometimes you do have good data. An example of that is GDP, unemployment, various indicators that we have in the country. So we wondered if we could do speech-to-text and then take people directly to the ONS website and generate a graph in real time. And this sometimes doesn't work, so the build-up doesn't go well. But for example, I might be able to say, employment is falling. And it generates a graph in real time with the latest ONS statistics. And you can, thanks. And here is proof that those are the right numbers. So to be able to do that in a live fact-checking situation is valuable, I hope you realize. One other thing that we've done that is changing the lives of our fact-checkers, and I'm going to go back to my presentation for this. How much time do I have? I've got 17 seconds. Is we've started doing a little bit of machine learning, and we did a project around claim detection. So we got 80 volunteers to look at sentences from political TV shows and to categorize them according to what type of claim they might be. So whether it was a personal experience claim, which we can't really check, a quantity, a correlation, causation, a current law, a prediction, or another type of claim. And our thoughts were that if we categorized a couple of these, we'd have a good proxy for claims, because actually we spend 80% of our time fact-checking statistics more than anything. So we built that. There's a paper coming out on it actually on Friday, where we improve upon the current gold standard by about 5%, which is pretty cool. And we have incorporated it into the tools so that now when there is live fact-checking, you can turn on claim detection and the sentences that it thinks are claims come out as bold, which helps summarize our fact-checkers the things that they need to care about. So if I have 1 second, I would just like to play this game. Which political TV show do you think has the most claims in it? So, is it Prime Minister's Questions, BBC Question Time, The Andrew Marr Show, or The Sunday Politics? Stick up your hand for Prime Minister's Questions. Okay. BBC Question Time? Interesting. The Andrew Marr Show? Kind of depends on the guest, to be honest. Sunday Politics? Okay. So bear in mind, this isn't like groundbreaking research and it's not done very well, but here is the percentage of claims made in political TV shows. So the dots at the side represent the number of episodes we actually annotated, so it's very unfair on the Sunday Politics. But you can see that Prime Minister's Questions actually has about 30% claims, and Question Time, once again, has quite a large range depending on the guests, but more often than not doesn't have that many claims in it. But if you think about it, this is quite concentrated in terms of the time and also the claims that's made.
There was a moment in PMQs last week where Jeremy Corbyn just started shouting claims, just one after the other. That's very convenient when they do that.
Exactly. So yeah, I think that's, I hope I haven't missed anything. There's one more thing, is that we're not just doing this in the UK, we're also doing it in South Africa, Argentina, and Brazil at the same time. So we have other fact checkers that we're giving these tools to, and in Brazil at the moment there's a presidential election, a debate. They used this for their presidential debate recently, and these are some of the comments that we've got from them, which is really great. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Wow, really awesome work. So those are, it looks like mostly tools for humans, but I can also really imagine that it's super useful for various organizations here to have access to that by machines, so for example through an API. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you already provide or have plans for?
We have plans for that, definitely. I think at the moment we're still kind of, it doesn't feel like it with the software show, but we're still kind of prototyping what that data needs to look like for it to be as long-lasting as possible, because things change quite rapidly. Like if you, maybe not like inflation and GDP figures, but actually content goes out of date quite a lot, and we haven't got to the point where we are keeping things up to date in that way that I would feel comfortable putting it out into the world. I think it would be quite irresponsible right now, which is why I'd rather give it to fact checkers who understand their own content. But definitely, hopefully within the next year, we'll have solved that problem, and then there'll be an API for everyone to use.
Something that would be interesting to me while using sort of say for example on transcripts, if someone's moderating that, who, I don't want to come up with a cheesy statement, but who fact checks the fact checkers?
Yes.
How do I know they're neutral?
Yeah, that's a totally fair question, and our answer to that is you do, because everything is linked to primary sources. So if you ever see anything from full fact, it should never be like, this is a statement of the obvious. There should always be a link to that primary source that it's talking about. And if at any point that primary source doesn't reflect the thing that is being said, then that's a thing that you have to decide on yourself. Like we're not asking you to take our word for anything, basically. We're just saying that here's the research from primary sources from the very beginning. And actually, it's not about just saying this is the right answer. I think a lot of fact-checking is actually saying, here are the many interpretations, and depending on your interpretation that you think is best, then this is where you would end up. It's just about presenting you the options, not telling you this is the answer.